Hello, my name is Ryan Basant, and I'm just going to do a analysis on Jack London's In a Far Country. So, a little background on Jack London before I begin is that he was born in the year 1876 in San Francisco to an astrologist and a spiritual music teacher. He had a goal that was to write a minimum of 1,000 publishable words a day, and he always boasted about how he always wanted to write just purely for money. He didn't have any other goal in mind other than just writing for money. He died an alcoholic at the age of 40. He had spent the winter of 1897-98 in search of gold in the Klondike. And then he also took interest in the philosophies of Marx, Nietzsche, and Darwin. This was said that he did take interest uh, um, of each of these philosophers, but at certain points he had changed his opinion and disagreed, and didn't go with like believe it one, and he would choose the other over them. This is just information to keep in mind to understand how it influenced his writing in the short story. So a little summary of the story in a far country. It takes place in an expedition to Yukon in search for gold in the Klondike. Amongst the group of travelers, there are two that are known as the Incapables. The first of the two Incapables is a man by the name of Carter Weatherby, who had a clerkship beforehand and gave up on it and was not in search of romance, but just wanted to basically stop grinding and wished to risk great hazards in view of corresponding returns. The next character that's a part of the Incapables is a man by the name of Percy Cuthbert. He is a rich man and he embarked on this journey just for the pleasures of um, adventure and romance. So they're completely opposite from one another. One's going there just to stop grinding, one's going there just for the pleasure of going there. As winter arrives, before meeting their destination, the two incapables stayed back at the cabin. They came to like a agreement that they do not want to embark on this journey throughout the winter. They rather stay safe at this cabin that they have now found with a group of travelers who are embarking on this journey. Essentially, these two are known as the ones that slack off. They don't do their chores, they don't chip in as much when they're rowing their canoe and so on. They're like barely moving the oars. They're not doing chores at all. They're just incapable of doing anything to survive. They just rely on others. So the group is fine with them staying back. One has the input of saying, "Hey, they might not get along and last," but the leader of the so-called leader of the group was like, "That's fine. We'll go on well with them. Nobody's in disagreement." As these two are living in this cabin and winter goes on, the night becomes longer and there is eventually no sunlight. And there is basically a food supply at the back with sugar and so on. And they begin to despise one another and separate everything, like divide it equally as much as they can, like the sugar, and they divide the room, the bed, and how they are. Essentially, they don't like how they talk, like what they're interested in, the songs they sing, or whatever it may be. They just everything just becomes an annoyance. Eventually, they sort of lose their sanity with how quiet and still the area has become. The cold night doesn't allow them to go far, as they get frostbites in this terrible weather condition. And as there's no sunlight up there in the north, they are unable to go um, far to go look for anything. And that silence is like in their mind that something is there waiting for them. It might be the other incapable, or it might just be some animal or whatever. It's just like the stillness is just too much for them. Eventually, their bodies grow ill from the lack of proper diet, and they eventually get into a fight because as the sun comes up, they can see a bit more, and they're enjoying the so-called end to the misery. And one of them finds out that the other had taken sugar from their half of the pile, and he gets enraged and uses the axe that they were using to chop firewood, and basically swings at him, and just slices him like his body, and he dies from that. So what we can see here is a bit of naturalism. So basically, there is a bit of Darwinian nature behind it that he had believed in, Jack London that is, that we can see has tied into this story. It depicts how violent and harsh the northern weather and nature can truly be. It led to both physical and a mental toll on the two people, and it was essentially a survival of the fittest. A quote that depicts such is had everything in the Northland had that crushing effect. The absence of light and motion, the darkness, the infinite peace of the brooding land, the ghastly silence, which made the echo of each heartbeat a sacrilege, the solemn forest which seemed to guard an awful, inexpressible something which neither word nor thought could compass. So this just breaks it down to there, because everything's like in hibernation in this north cold frost bitten area. There's no life at all to be seen. The sun doesn't come out at all at this point in winter that up north. You have to wait until January where the sun slowly comes up, and then eventually the summertime where there is no night and it's only daytime. So basically this darkness and infinite peace is just getting at them because it's just complete silence, and you're left with either your own thoughts or having to deal with the person that annoys you the most in the world. And that just breaks at them, and they were not able to survive because of these conditions. The frost was just going at them every time they went out, came back in. The fire wasn't like warming them up fast enough. Their nose got frostbite, their toes had fallen off, at least from 2 joints. And yeah, it was just taking a toll on them. Realism can also be seen throughout this short story. People's selfishness will basically lead to their downfall, and little excerpt from the beginning of the story. It says, but his pinch will come in learning properly to shape his mind's attitude toward all things, and especially toward his fellow man. For the courtesies of ordinary life, he must substitute unselfishness, forbearance, and tolerance. And as we can see throughout the story, their selfishness when it comes to helping out the group to survive, their need to split the food, the sugar especially. They keep bringing up the sugar because they made a syrup of it and was pouring it all over like children. They were just obsessed with the sugar, and then they realized they need to ration it a bit more, but their selfishness basically led to their demise, and the tolerance for one another also did not help because they, instead of like working it out, they just decided to go at each other until the point where they weren't talking, and that quietness broke them down even more as it just drove them insane. Next, we have a bit of foreshadowing that was shown where one of the characters that was traveling amongst the Incapables said to the leader that, well, my friend and good comrade, the Kilkenny cats fought till neither hide nor hair nor yowl was left. You understand? Till nothing was left. Very good. Now these 2 men don't like work. They won't work. We know that. They'll be all alone in that cabin all winter, a mighty long, dark winter. Kenny Katz well, essentially depicting that these two will go at each other like the Kilkenny cats, which are essentially cats that I believe Irish soldiers had put to fight each other during the war as a means of entertainment. It was like a fight to see which cat would win. Essentially, if you leave them long enough, they will go at each other. The character was saying the two incapables were basically going to eventually go at each other because they didn't like to work and it was a long dark winter with no light and everything. You're confined to the cabin, you're not going to get very far. Eventually they broke, and that led to them having that little disgruntled area where one killed the other with an axe because they took sugar from their pile. And here are a list of references that I had used.